Hi, this is Dan Russell. Welcome to this session of the summit. We hope your summit's going really, really well and you're learning things that are going to help your business. And I'm hopeful that this session will bring more value to you. This particular session is going to focus on cloud industry trends and best practices. A little bit on myself. I've been in the industry for 25 plus years, seen numerous changes in the industry. If I had to link back through all the different changes, mainframe to distributed systems to e-commerce, web-based systems, mobile systems, and now cloud. And cloud's been with us for a while. It definitely is gaining a lot of traction and momentum. And a super high percentage of our customers are leveraging the cloud technology. We'd like to share some of that insight with you today to help you in your cloud strategies and your cloud plans. So a little bit about the agenda. We will cover overall cloud trends. And this includes data from outside analysts. We will talk about the trends specifically for applications, analytics, and databases. And we will also talk about best practices. A little bit on Dataville. So Dataville's been in business for 15 years. We have about 600 customers in North America, US and Canada. And those customers in that 15-year period, we've helped many of these clients move from on-prem to the cloud, make decisions on how to leverage the cloud, which workloads should move, how do they move, which ones should migrate versus modernize, and the different options that they have available to them across the different cloud providers. We are tight. So we're going to bring today this presentation as a summary of our knowledge of all the work we've done with our client base. We also work very, very closely with the leading cloud public platform providers and have insight into their strategy, their new services, their past offerings. We will bring that to bear into this presentation, along with industry analysts who are tracking the overall cloud market and the trends that they're seeing. So let's start first. Combination of industry analysts and Dataville's own observations. What are the desired business outcomes that people are using and driving their cloud strategies? I would say 3 years ago, the highest desired outcome was moving away from internal data centers and hosted environments. But today, the drivers are much broader than that. We have clients whose focus is on more of the growth side of their business. How do they leverage cloud to innovate internally and externally with their customers? How do they use the cloud to better engage with their customers, to gain a competitive advantage? As you merge, it can simplify the mergers of systems coming from multiple different companies into one common platform. It also can address agility and business insights and business scalability. But sometimes clients' desired outcomes sit more on the right-hand side of this slide, which is more around operational efficiency, cost reduction, reliability, high availability, security and compliance, or a combination of both. So what we find is each of our clients that we engage with will have 2 to 5 different desired outcomes that they're focused on. And those are the primary drivers that they seek to achieve by leveraging the cloud. When Gartner looks at clients and said, okay, what have you actually achieved? What outcomes have you achieved by moving to the cloud? There's 2 graphs overlaying here. One is the blue bars, one is the green bars. The blue bar says, was this item any of the top 3 that a client mentioned? For example, IT modernization is in the top 3 outcomes, actual outcomes for 40% of the companies. Improved efficiency was a top 3 outcome for 39%. The green bar says that was their number 1 outcome that they achieved. So for example, IT modernization, 17% of the respondents said that was their number 1 outcome that they achieved. So if you look at this, I like to look at like the top 5 or 6, because those are what I would call as the most common outcomes people are achieving. IT modernization, improved efficiency, improved data security, productivity, innovation, and cost savings. If you think back 3 years ago, what would have been at the top? Cost savings was near the top. And innovation was not exactly viewed as one of the top drivers. That's probably something that we've seen. And security was actually a inhibitor or a blocker for people moving to the cloud because of the concern over data security. But the cloud platform providers have invested billions of dollars in their security and it's hard for any internal organization or hoster to keep up with all the security viruses, malware that's out there. So the cloud providers actually have more secure environments than you could have in your own internal today. So now you're seeing that climb the list of outcomes that people are achieving. We've seen a huge flip, and this has been validated by both Gartner and, in this case, AWS, but the same thing would be true from Azure, Oracle, and GCP, is that the primary driver in what we call Cloud 1.0 was infrastructure-based migrations, where a client would be either at a point where they needed to refresh their internal data centers, or they had a hosting contract coming to end and they had to decide, do they re-up or do they change? But those infrastructure platform decisions were driving the cloud migrations. There were one-off decisions being made at that point in time around moving, like from an on-prem CRM system to a cloud-based system like Salesforce, or moving HR applications from on-prem to something like an Oracle or an SAP or a Workday. But the overall larger migrations are being driven by infrastructure. And when those infrastructure moves took place, the workloads would migrate. The workloads running on that infrastructure would migrate. In most cases, those were lifted and shifted into the cloud environments. What happened there is many of the clients did not see the desired cost savings and efficiency they thought they would by lifting and shifting workloads. So now what's happened is what we call Cloud 2.0, where clients are looking at the workloads first and then deciding where those workloads should move. Should they remain on-prem? Should they move to the cloud? If they move to the cloud, what are the right environments to support those workloads? Do you move into an IaaS environment or use a PaaS-specific offering from one of the cloud platform providers? Or do you custom build a new environment that's cloud native from the get-go? And those decisions are very, very much being business-driven around the applications, the analytics. And then what we found in both Cloud 1.0 and Cloud 2.0, your database is at the heart of these migrations. It's one of the hardest workloads to move. It's one of the more complex workloads, and there's lots of PaaS offerings there. So both the 1.0 clients who still are using that as their predominant cloud strategy, and the ones that are in more of the workload-based, both of them are looking closely at the database platforms. When you look at market share, and this is market share as of fourth quarter 2021, so it's pretty current. At that point in time, AWS had 33%, Azure had 21%, GCP has 10%, Alibaba has 6%, and then it drops off quickly from there. If you wound the clock back 3 years ago, AWS would be a larger percentage, Azure about the same, a little bit smaller than this, and GCP has grown a fair amount. So that's where we're seeing some momentum today. But we still see, and Dataville supports all these different environments for our clients. We still see AWS as the #1 platform and Azure as a close #2 and GCP as a distant #3 when our clients are looking at it. And then when you look at some of the other IBM, Oracle's OCI, and some of these other platforms that are new and popping up, they still are not gaining significant market share at this point in time. Gartner looks at the market and, they see the same shift from technology-based decisions to business outcome-based decisions, and clients going through a journey of migrate, modernize, and optimize. And I would say that we used to see a lot of lift and shift migrations, then modernizations. And one of the trends we're seeing in the last 24 months is that clients are looking at modernization as part of their migrations. And some are considering modernizations as part of their initial migration, some as a short phase after, and some as a future need. And then once you're in the cloud, optimization is critical. How do you optimize your environments, make sure your consumption and your bills are optimized, performance is optimized? Lots of things come into play in that optimization phase. We talked about applications. The big shift there is going from, legacy applications to from perpetual licenses to SaaS. Many of you have probably bought many SaaS software licenses and moved from kind of a one-time buy into that subscription model that scales with your business. Move from capital expenditures to expenses. And then on the custom application side, we are seeing three different trends I'll talk to later around replatforming and refactoring legacy applications. When you look at containers, that's a huge shift. Gartner's seeing a large growth in containers. I've got a metric in a minute about that. And a lot of clients were taking their VM environments and just moving those into the cloud. We're seeing a pretty big shift from containers to from VM environments to container centric, which is more agile and scalable than your legacy VMs are. And Gartner estimates that 85% of the customers in the industry will be on leveraging containers, within 3 years. And there's new roles popping up. Many of you probably have these in your org. If not, you will as you accelerate your cloud journeys. The roles are DevOps and site reliability engineering, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And then the other change is your platform providers, whether they were hosters or value-added resellers, system integrators, used to have pretty stable managed service environments to support your infrastructure. As you move to the cloud environments are much more dynamic. And so Gartner says your managed service provider should provide ongoing enhancements, innovation, in addition to the operative side. And so as you look to your service providers, that's something you're going to want to look for, is which providers can innovate with you in more of a DevOps kind of mode in the cloud versus more of the stable environment support that you saw in the past. There's a survey by a third party called Flexera that they do on an annual basis. And they estimate, this is their 2021, 50% of the workloads are now in the cloud, 60% for SMB. So they've moved faster to the cloud. I have seen a huge shift in that metric. Dataville's business has gone from 30% 3 years ago to 80% in the cloud today. So I think these metrics would be much larger if you did the survey at the end of this year. 89% of the customers they surveyed are multi-cloud. There's a pro and a con to multi-cloud. If you're going to leverage an AWS and an Azure and a GCP or any of the 2 or 3, there's a cost that goes with that. There's also a complexity that goes with it. So larger enterprises are more likely to be multi-cloud, smaller mid-sized enterprises less likely. In their survey, AWS and Azure are being equally considered. They do see some gain of momentum to GCP, which I mentioned before, but still significantly behind the other 2 market leaders. And when you look at the services that these public cloud platforms provide, what's being consumed the most, the largest consumption is around the DBaaS offering, around the databases and analytics. So those are the fastest growing services for all of the leading cloud providers. 30% are leveraging Kubernetes and containers. That's up significantly, probably would have been close to 0 3 years ago, and probably less than 10% a year ago. So that's rapidly changing. And then the cloud providers, whenever there's changes in our market, you can think of the changes, software changes, mobile, et cetera, analytics. Early on, there were niche providers that fill the gaps, and over time, the larger providers incorporate that more and more into their offerings. The same thing is happening with management tools for cloud. Used to be a lot of third-party tools you would need to manage your environments. Now, Azure, AWS, Oracle are incorporating management tools into their platforms, and more customers are using their suite of management tools and relying less on best-of-breed tools. But there are still going to be times when you need to leverage best-of-breed tools. Another big trend is automation. A lot of that automation is coming from the innovative side. So, supporting agile development and DevOps means you got to rapidly provision infrastructure much faster, which has led to infrastructure as a code. Some of the continuous integration, continuous deployments to get your new applications into production faster, improve testing. A big change we're seeing is around application monitoring and database monitoring. Those are becoming critical on your workloads as they move to the cloud, and your legacy tool sets might not support that. And then providing some horizontal scaling. What kind of challenges are our customers facing and other clients facing as they move to the cloud? It's hard to attract and retain cloud skills. They're in high demand. You probably have heard of the Great Resignation. Cloud is driving a lot of that. So even if you build expertise in-house, it might have a risk of them turning over. it's hard to keep up with all the platform changes. AWS and Azure specifically are introducing new services at such a rapid pace. It's hard for internal teams to stay in sync with that. Cloud native solutions require different expertise than legacy platforms. And the internal processes you have to manage your legacy platforms need to evolve to support cloud and hybrid environments, on-prem and cloud environments. And so that's hard to keep up with. And then the time it takes and the spend it takes to manage these environments. And then security and compliance is always a challenge. So what are some workload specific market trends? When you look at package applications, you have two choices if you're running on legacy perpetual applications. Do you lift and shift those into an IaaS environment if you want to move those workloads into the cloud, or do you leave them on-prem? Or do you want to replace them with a SaaS offering and shift from kind of a capital expense to an operating expense, and then scale your usage as your business scales? So those are the two big trends. I'm sure each of you have been facing that in your customers inside your organizations. When you look at the custom applications, you really have three options to consider. Do you lift and shift and move that into an IaaS environment? Or do you consider replatforming, leveraging containers such as Kubernetes and Docker? Or do you go to a kind of a cloud native environment for that application and refactor it, leveraging and maybe moving from Windows to Linux to reduce some of your licensing costs, move from legacy relational databases like Oracle SQL Server, DB2, onto open source platforms to gain either cost advantages for licensing or performance advantages? Do you leverage containers and microservices to make it easier to innovate those applications, and leveraging serverless to scale with your business? So those are a lot of decisions to be made in the refactoring space. And all of these usually end up with leveraging DevOps. When you look at analytics, what are the big trends? Migration of existing data warehouses into IaaS. We saw a lot of that early on in Cloud 1.0. We see very little of that in Cloud 2.0. Today, I think most clients are choosing to rebuild new analytic environments cloud native from the get-go, leveraging some more modern data platforms that are provided by the cloud platform providers like Redshift, like Azure Data Lakes, Synapse, and Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse. Those are all platforms, or leveraging a third-party tool like a Snowflake to build out your core. And then rebuilding your data integrations and looking at your front ends, whether you're going to retain the legacy front ends that you have with, say, a Tableau or a Click, or whether you're going to use more of a cloud native or a more modern one provided by AWS like QuickSight, or Azure with their Power BI. So those are all the things that we're seeing. But one common trend in analytics is data governance is becoming more and more important to manage your data, to manage the quality of the data integrations, and ensure that the data that you're leveraging for either your traditional analytics or for your machine learning, artificial intelligence is accurate data. And then when you look at databases, what are some of the trends in the database space? Lots of changes in the database space. We've been managing data platforms for 15 years, and I can tell you for the first 12 years, the data platforms were very stable. We did see new platforms introducing into our client environments like MySQL and Postgres, Cassandra, MariaDB, et cetera, Mongo. But by and large, the legacy platforms were there. The new platforms were for new applications and new business needs. In the last 2 years, we've seen a huge shift towards looking at modern data platforms. The biggest driver for that is cost reduction and licensing. But the cloud platforms and the modern data platforms have worked hard on performance and scalability, and that's driving a lot of these changes. So clients are looking at modernizations, and we'll talk in a minute about some of the other business drivers around those modernizations. And then the platform providers are maturing their database as a service offerings, more managed environments where you don't have to do the the patches and the upgrades, but there still are services that you need either internally or from an external provider to help you get the most out of your data platforms. And we're seeing these trends are pretty consistent across the 4 leading platforms that I mentioned before. So let's talk a little bit more about applications on the custom side. The biggest driver for custom applications right now is speed of innovation, competitive differentiation, and bringing more value to your external customers. Some of the technology trends I've already spoken to around microservices and containers. We're seeing a huge uptick in leveraging serverless as you build out your new applications. And the databases under your new apps are now more purpose-built. Instead of picking a standard like SQL Server, all applications, whether package or custom, run on SQL. More and more customers are looking to pick the right and the best data platform underneath each business application based upon the use case. In the analytics world, what we've seen is kind of legacy analytics was very purpose-built. You would look at the end analytics that you wanted to perform, decide what data needed to be in the data warehouse or in the data mart. You would, extract that data, transform, load it, and then run your analytics. In today's world, what's happening is people are building their back-end analytics much faster. They're putting them into data lakes. I would say that in our business, close to 100% of those are in the cloud and leveraging cloud technologies. And then you build your data integrations, and then your data evolves as your analytic needs evolve and mature. And many times these are starting to leverage non-relational data platforms. It's setting clients up for the foundation to do ML and AI. And we're starting to see some time series-based analysis for things like shop floor control and IoT. So there's many new usages of the information in these data lakes. When you look at database modernization, I've spoken to some of the key drivers there. License cost is by far number one. The legacy relational database vendors, their licensing costs are going up, and they're getting more careful about ensuring that the clients are properly licensed for the number of users that they have. And some of your legacy environments where the licensing is tied to the CPUs, and now when you move to the cloud, you can start to optimize your hardware, reduce the number of CPUs, reduce the amount of licenses you need, and potentially move to some cloud, open source data platforms that can perform quite well. Performance is another big driver. The NoSQL platforms are gaining traction. It's probably 10 to 15% of the databases out there today, but that's a rapidly segment of the market, and its horizontal scaling is the biggest driver for that, for business applications like e-commerce engines, booking engines for travel, hospitality, things like that perform better on the NoSQL platforms than they do on relational. And then less management overhead and go into more purpose-built data platforms. So internally, what kind of challenges and changes are clients making? Most of our clients are either outsourcing or building a cloud center of excellence. And they can then be shared across all of the IT organizations and the business users that are leveraging the cloud. And what are some of those skills? Database expertise in clouds. Your data estates are becoming more complex. You're evolving to where you're more have multiple data platforms. It's hard to keep up with all those different data platforms, which is leading to a lot of outsourcing in that space. In the cloud engineers, the site reliability engineering is a critical role that can help you innovate your cloud platforms to keep up with your application innovations and to maintain and support those. So that's a critical role. DevOps is another very, very important role. And having cloud solution architects that can work with your business users and your IT organizations to ensure that you are architecting the best environments and leveraging either migrations or modernizations or cloud managed platforms where it makes sense. So let's kind of summarize. What are some of those best practices that you either have today or could be leveraging as you move more and more of your workloads to the cloud? First is ensure that you have a true strategy and a roadmap. It used to be a lot of clients were more project-based with their cloud. Now they have more holistic strategies. And a piece of that is your application strategies. We call it the 6 R's. So looking at your full application portfolio, are you going to retain it? Are you going to leave it on-prem? Are you going to retire it? Are you going to replace it? And if you replace it, are you going to replace with SaaS, or are you going to custom build? And if you move a customized application, are you going to lift and shift it? So rehost it, or are you going to replatform it onto containers, or are you going to refactor it onto a cloud native applications? And each business app should have that in your roadmap. When you look at database options, do you want to migrate into an IaaS, into a cloud managed environment, or do you want to modernize onto a modern cloud platform? And thinking that to us, that decision should be more business case, use case driven, and less just for technology's sake, although cost is one reason why you might change out your data platforms without making changes to your business applications. In the analytics space, what are your analytics today? What does your business need today? What do they need in the future? Having a strong roadmap there is really, really important. The analytics is an area where we see a lot of POCs to validate before they scale. So most of you are probably leveraging POCs. If not, you probably should be as you look towards more cloud native analytics. Infrastructure and security is going to be a critical piece of your planning, ensuring that you have compliance. Many of you are in compliant oriented industries, which will be important. And then leveraging tools now to speed the process. There are database schema conversion tools that can look at the complexity of changing out your data platform, help you decide which databases should be changed, which ones maybe shouldn't. Same on the application side. There are now tools available to help assess an existing app, help you determine should you replatform, rehost, replatform, or consider refactoring. Cost analysis is critical in building that use case, especially now with the down economy that some of us are facing. ROI is really, really important. Had a CI last week tell us that any project that can't reach a return on investment in less than 12 months they're not going to move forward for right now. Well, that means you've got to do a better job at building your business case and better definition of where the cost savings, what the spend is going to be and what your cost savings are going to be. The cloud vendors all want you to move to their platforms, and every cloud vendor has funding available. Many times you have to use one of their partners to get access to their funding. And then it's tied to the partner's expertise in the different workloads and the PaaS offerings that you're looking at leveraging. So picking those partners is really important, but I can tell you there's quite a bit of funding that can offset up to 25, 30% of your first year costs once you're in the cloud. And there's different ways you get that funding back to you, whether it's through helping to offset your migration costs or helping to offset your actual cloud bills, or a combination of both. Talked about leveraging partners. It's really important to pick partners who have expertise in the workloads and the platforms that you're looking at using. And then cloud managed services is really, really important to ensure that you're continuously optimizing and ensuring that both your environments are optimized, your performance, your availability, and most importantly, your cloud spend. Many clients provision environments, they scale them, but when your business scales back, they don't scale back their environments, their cloud costs get out of control. Another best practice is on your stable workloads, ensuring that you're leveraging reserved instances for those more stable workloads. So thank you for your time today. Hopefully this is beneficial for you. We here at Dataville would be happy to talk to you further and provide additional advice if you just want to bounce some ideas off of us. We have a deep expertise in many of the things I've talked about today. My hope is that you're on a positive cloud journey right now. Some of the information you learned here can help you throughout the rest of this summit, learn additional deeper information, but also can help you refine your cloud strategy. So thanks for your time today.